Jax had always known that being human in the Galactic Alliance was dangerous. Other species looked at humans with caution, sometimes with disdain. We were reckless, impulsive, and far too emotional. And yet here he was, aboard the alien freighter Aurora's Edge, standing before the most advanced warp drive he had ever seen. Its smooth silver panels glowed with blue energy, and delicate conduits hummed like living veins. Jax could feel the power in the room almost vibrating through the soles of his boots. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. He reached out to check the system's calibration, his fingers brushing the control surface. Sparks shot out like tiny lightning bolts. A warning siren blared, echoing across the metal walls of the engine room. The hum of the warp drive turned into a shriek, and for a moment the world seemed to tilt. "Stop!" The captain's voice rang from the bridge, sharp and cold. Jax froze, but it was already too late. With a blinding flash, the warp drive shuddered violently, then fell silent. The room went dark, except for the faint glow of damaged circuits. Smoke curled from the panels, and the air smelled of ozone. Jax's heart sank. He had broken it. From the bridge came footsteps, fast, deliberate, and terrifyingly calm. The captain herself appeared, a figure taller than any human Jax had ever seen. Her silver hair gleamed under the emergency lights, and her eyes, gold like molten metal, burned into his very soul. She didn't shout. She didn't panic. She simply stared. "Humans," she said slowly, her voice smooth and unyielding. "You are always unpredictable." Jax opened his mouth, but no words came. Fear had tied his tongue. He wanted to explain, to apologize, but he knew it would not matter. The warp drive was dead. The ship, this enormous vessel capable of jumping light years in minutes, was now stranded. They were in the middle of a dead system, with no nearby stations, no allies, and no immediate help. And it was all his fault. The captain stepped closer, each movement precise, controlled, and yet somehow filled with weight. She was a commander, a leader, and her entire being demanded obedience. Jax shrank slightly under her gaze, feeling smaller than he had ever felt in his life. "The cost of this mistake," she said, her voice almost a whisper now, but it carried through the room like steel, "is not something you can repay with credits or labor. It is personal." Jax felt his stomach drop. Personal. He had read about alien customs, about how some species demanded sacrifices for mistakes. But he had never expected this. He tried to meet her gaze, but her eyes were like furnaces, burning through his fear. "You will serve me," she said. The words were simple, but they struck him harder than any blow, "until the debt is repaid." Jax felt the walls of the engine room close in. Serve her? What did that even mean? Days, months, years? He had no choice. The crew looked to him with silent judgment, their eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and caution. They knew he was human. They knew humans were unpredictable. And now they also knew he had failed. His throat felt dry, his palms sweaty. He wanted to run, to disappear into the endless void of space outside the hull. But there was nowhere to go. The stars stretched infinitely beyond the ship's walls, cold and indifferent. For the first time, Jax felt the weight of being a human in an alien world, alone, fragile, and completely exposed. The captain's gaze softened just a fraction. Not much, but enough for Jax to notice. There was no mercy in it, no kindness, just recognition. She knew what he was capable of, even if he did not. And perhaps in some strange way, she also knew that humans could surprise even the most disciplined minds. Jax nodded, barely audible. It was not consent. It was survival. He had no idea what lay ahead, no clue how he would repay this unimaginable debt. But he knew one thing. From this moment, his life would never be the same. As the alarms continued to blare and the smoke drifted upward, Jax took a deep breath. He had made a mistake. A terrible, unforgivable mistake, and now he would learn the price of being human among the stars. Jax had thought the hardest part was surviving the warp drive's failure. He had been wrong. The true trial began the moment the captain stepped fully onto the engine deck. She moved with a quiet authority, her silver hair flowing over her shoulders like liquid metal. Every step she took echoed through the ship, a rhythm of control that made his chest tighten with unease. "You have caused a grievous error," she said, her golden eyes locking onto his. "The warp drive is not merely a machine. It is the heart of this vessel. It carries the lives of everyone aboard, and you have nearly ended them all." Jack swallowed. He wanted to apologize again, to tell her he didn't mean it. But the words stuck in his throat. He had no defense. Every instinct told him to flee, but there was nowhere to run. He was trapped, physically and now somehow morally. "You cannot fix it on your own," she continued, her tone steady, measured. "No human knowledge, no human skill will repair what you have broken. This is not punishment for you, but necessity for the ship." Jax shivered. The coldness in her voice cut deeper than any blade could. He glanced around the engine room. The crew stood silently watching. Some of them's eyes were wide with fear, others narrowed in judgment. None of them spoke. They didn't need to. Everyone understood he had failed and the price would be personal. Then, "What must I do?" Jax asked quietly, his voice barely audible. It sounded weaker than he intended. The captain studied him for a long moment, as if weighing his soul against the damage he had caused. Then slowly, deliberately, she spoke. "You will serve me, not in work alone. Not in apology. You will be with me until the debt is repaid. Your skills, your presence, your loyalty will be mine until the ship moves again through the stars." Jax's stomach sank. Serve her. He had imagined fines, extra shifts, maybe even being sent home in shame. But this was something else entirely. It was personal, intimate, and terrifying. His human mind raced. What did she truly want? And could he even survive it? "You want me?" he whispered, though he immediately regretted speaking aloud. Fear made the words come out like a question he did not mean to ask. The captain's golden eyes did not waver. She was neither cruel nor angry. There was a quiet firmness in her expression that made Jax feel exposed in a way he had never experienced. "I want you to keep this ship alive," she said. "And in doing so, you will serve not just me, but everyone aboard. You will give your mind, your strength, and your human intuition. Humans are unpredictable. You may falter, you may fail again, but your presence may also save us." Jax felt a strange mix of fear and pride. The words were a demand, yes, but they were also acknowledgement. The captain did not see him as weak. She saw him as a potential, a tool perhaps, but also something more. "Understand this," she continued. "Your freedom is tied to the ship's survival. Every moment you falter, you risk the lives of all aboard. And every moment you endure, you will grow stronger. You may think this is punishment, human, but it is a test, and you will be tested beyond what you imagine." Jax nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. He had no choice. No matter how terrifying this was, he would survive. He had to survive. The ship, the crew, and the captain herself all depended on it. As he turned to begin his first task under her supervision, he felt her gaze follow him. It was not judgment this time. It was a silent promise. She would watch, she would test, and perhaps she might even see something worth trusting in him. For the first time, Jax realized that being human was not just about weakness or recklessness. Humans could endure. Humans could adapt. And perhaps, just perhaps, humans could become more than anyone, alien or otherwise, expected. The warp drive remained dead, humming faintly in the background, but Jax understood that the real journey had only just begun. The price of his mistake was steep, but it would teach him something the universe had never taught any human before. That survival was more than skill, and trust was worth more than fear, and for that he would pay. The first morning after the captain's decree felt like the longest of Jax's life. The ship hummed quietly around him, a constant reminder of the warp drive that still lay dead. Every panel, every console, every glowing wire seemed to whisper at him, a silent accusation of his failure. Jax rubbed his eyes and took a deep breath, trying to steel himself. There was no turning back. He was now tied to this alien vessel, to this captain, and in some unspoken way, to the fate of everyone aboard. His first task was simple: clean the engine bay, check minor systems, and organize tools, but every movement carried weight. The crew watched him silently, their expressions unreadable. Some were curious, some indifferent, some openly skeptical, and all the while the captain's presence lingered. She didn't hover, didn't speak unless necessary, but Jax could feel her eyes tracking every step, judging every motion, weighing every choice. It was exhausting. Hours passed and sweat dampened his uniform. His human stamina, fragile compared to their species, was pushed to its limits. Still he worked, gripping panels and tightening bolts, rewiring circuits with hands that shook more from fear than from fatigue. Every time he glanced at the warp drive, the magnitude of his failure loomed larger. One wrong move, one misstep, and the ship could fall into complete silence, adrift in the void. By the third day, Jax realized that the price he had to pay wasn't just physical labor. It was learning discipline, patience, and a kind of focus he had never known as a human. The captain didn't instruct him verbally much, but her expectations were clear. Every task had to be precise, every action calculated. There was no room for human recklessness, and yet, paradoxically, his unpredictability was sometimes the only thing keeping him alive. "You must learn," the captain said one evening, her voice softer than he expected, "that mistakes cannot always be fixed with skill alone. Sometimes they require endurance. Sometimes they require understanding." Jax didn't respond at first. He wasn't sure he understood. But slowly the words sank in. She wasn't punishing him. She was shaping him. His failure had brought him here, yes, but survival would teach him something no human school ever could. Meals were a strange ritual. The crew ate quietly, efficiently, their hands and mouths moving in near-perfect synchronization. Jax fumbled with alien utensils, spilling more than he consumed, earning subtle but disapproving glances. The captain, seated at the head of the dining area, observed silently. Sometimes she would offer a word of correction. Not harsh, but precise, like the subtle adjustment of a delicate instrument. "You are clumsy," she said once, her golden eyes fixed on him. "But you notice things others do not. That will be your strength." Her words were a puzzle. At first they stung, but over time he began to see the truth. His mistakes had meaning. His observations had value. Even humans, messy, impulsive humans, could be extraordinary if they endured. By the end of the first week, Jax felt a small shift inside himself. He was still afraid, still uncertain, still human in every way. But the fear had changed. It no longer paralyzed him. It sharpened him. Every step he took, every panel he adjusted, every minor system he repaired was a payment toward his debt. And, secretly, a proof of his worth. The captain, for all her discipline and authority, began to show fleeting signs of recognition. A nod, a quiet acknowledgement when he completed a task efficiently, a pause in her otherwise unyielding gaze. Jax noticed, and it warmed something deep inside him. For the first time, he felt that his presence wasn't entirely resented. That maybe, just maybe, humans weren't entirely useless in the eyes of the stars. One night, alone in the engine bay, Jax allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. He touched the warp drive casing lightly, feeling the faint hum of its dormant power. He whispered to himself, "I'll fix this. I'll survive this. And I'll prove them wrong." He didn't yet understand how he would do it or what the captain truly expected of him beyond obedience. But he knew this. Being human here was no longer just a weakness. It was a chance to endure, to adapt, and maybe to become something more than he had ever imagined. The price of failure was high. The weight of service was heavy. But Jax was learning that humans could carry burdens, and sometimes carrying them well was the first step to greatness. And in the silence of the ship, as the stars glittered coldly beyond the hull, Jax felt the first flicker of hope. Days turned into weeks aboard Aurora's edge, and Jax slowly began to understand the rhythm of the ship. The silence of space outside felt less like isolation and more like a distant song, soft, deep, and endless. Inside the ship, life followed a strict order. Every crew member moved with purpose. Every task had meaning. And yet, in the middle of all that precision, Jax remained the only unpredictable piece. The captain always stayed close, not hovering, not watching every second, but present, like a quiet gravity that Jax could never escape. He didn't know if she intended it or if it was simply her nature, but her presence pushed him to keep going, to keep trying, to endure. He began to notice things about her. The captain was stronger than any human, but she carried herself gently, as if always aware of how much she could break. She spoke little, but when she did, her words were like carefully placed stars meant to guide, never to waste. Her eyes, sharp and golden, were always alert, but there were moments, soft, fleeting, where something warmer flickered behind them. And Jax noticed those moments, even if she never said anything about them. One evening, after a long day repairing power relays, Jax sat alone in the engine room. His muscles ached. His hands were sore. But there was a quiet peace in him, the kind that came from work done with everything you had. The engine room lights glowed faintly blue, and the ship's quiet hum was the only sound. The captain's footsteps approached, steady, calm. He didn't turn immediately, but he felt her there. She was always easy to sense. She carried purpose with her like armor. "You worked without break today," she said softly. Jax exhaled a tired laugh. "Didn't really have much of a choice, did I?" The captain stepped closer. There was no anger in her tone. "Service under duty is not the same as slavery. You choose to continue, even when you are tired, even when you could refuse and suffer less." Jax looked up at her, genuinely confused. "What choice do I have? You said I have to repay the debt." "Yes," she said, her golden eyes steady. "But there are many who would have done the minimum. Many who would have fought me. Many who would have surrendered to despair." Her gaze softened just slightly. "You endure." Jax felt something in his chest shift. Not pride, not relief, something quieter. Something like being seen. He didn't know how to respond. Instead, he worked. And she stayed, standing beside him, not in command, not giving orders, just present. For a long time, they worked like that, side by side. In silence, it became a pattern. Sometimes she would speak, stories of her home, of the academy where she trained, of the expectations placed on her since childhood. Her life had been disciplined from the beginning, not because she chose it, but because she had to carry others. Her command wasn't just duty, it was burden. Jax listened. And for the first time since he boarded this ship, he felt like he understood her, not just as a captain, but as someone who had never been allowed to fail. One day, during a quiet meal, Jax clumsily dropped a piece of utensils again. The crew glanced at him, some annoyed, some amused, but the captain laughed. A quiet, soft laugh. It was the first time Jax had ever heard it. The crew froze. Jax froze. The sound was warm, gentle, human-like. He stared at her, stunned. She blinked once, then turned her gaze to her food again, face unreadable. But Jax saw it now, the crack in the armor. The softness hidden beneath the golden eyes. She was not unfeeling. She was lonely. And slowly, without realizing when it began, Jax stopped feeling like a prisoner. He felt connected, not just to the ship, not just to the work, but to her. Every day the warp drive still rested silent. Every day the journey remained paused. But something else had started moving. Jax was changing. And so quietly, carefully, so was the captain. They did not speak of it. But the silence between them had changed. It was no longer cold. It was shared. The quiet life aboard Aurora's Edge shattered in a single alarm. A deep, sharp siren echoed through the corridors. One Jax had never heard before. Red lights flashed across the walls, throwing eerie shadows as crew members rushed to their stations. Jax felt his chest tighten as fear crawled up his spine. He turned sharply toward the captain, who appeared at the entrance of the engine room like a blade drawn in silence. Her expression was calm, too calm, but her eyes shone with warning. "Pirates," she said. "3 vessels. They are closing in." The word struck like ice. These were not ordinary pirates. In deep space, pirates were desperate, ruthless, and merciless. They did not negotiate. They looted. They destroyed. They hunted stranded ships like hungry beasts, and Aurora's Edge was still without a working warp drive. "We can't run," Jax whispered. "No," the captain replied. "We cannot." The ship trembled violently as the first blast hit. Panels flickered. A pipe burst overhead, sending sparks raining like fireflies. Crew voices filled the comm system, tense but controlled. The captain snapped commands. Sharp, precise, unstoppable. "Shields to forward. Return fire. Keep distance from their boarding vectors." Her orders were like arrows, quick and unmistakable. Jax realized then that for all her calm, she was fighting for every life aboard. But the crew looked afraid. Truly afraid. Because they knew something Jax now fully understood. Without the warp drive, escape was impossible. "We'll be overwhelmed," Jax said, voice unsteady. The captain turned her eyes to him. There was no anger. "Only truth, yes, unless we bring the drive online." Jax felt his heart pound. He had been repairing it piece by piece. It was close, but not complete. "I need time," he said. "You will not have it," she replied. Another explosion rocked the ship. Worse this time. The floor shook beneath them. Every breath tasted like panic, and then something inside Jax snapped, not into fear, but into focus. He looked at the captain, the woman who had taken him in, demanded everything of him, shaped him not with cruelty, but with unyielding belief. The crew who had watched him fumble, sweat, learn, fail, and rise again. The ship he had worked so hard to understand. This wasn't just a vessel anymore. This was home, and he would not let it die. "Give me a team," Jack said, voice firm, stronger than he ever remembered hearing. "I'll bring the drive online." The captain did not hesitate. She trusted him. "Rin Kavor, Sirel," she commanded. "Go with him. Protect him." The three aliens moved instantly. No doubt, no question. The corridors shook as they ran. Sparks jumped from exposed circuits. Smoke filled the air. Jax coughed but didn't slow. Every footstep was a heartbeat. Every second mattered. They reached the warp core. It pulsed faintly. Alive but weak. "Cover me," Jax ordered, surprising even himself. Rin took position near the entrance. Kavor braced a shield generator. Sirel monitored energy readings, hands shaking slightly. Jax worked. Panels flew open. Wires snapped together. Tools clattered against metal. His fingers moved faster than his fear. He didn't think. He felt the machine. The way life support hummed, the way the conduits thrummed like nerves. Every lesson, every observation, every painful mistake, now it surged through him with purpose. The pirates hit again. This time the ship screamed, "Hurry!" Rin shouted, "I know!" Jax yelled back. Sparks burst across his arm, burning his skin, but he didn't stop. He reached deep into the core socket, connecting the final sequence. The warp engine roared. The deck vibrated under his boots. Energy flooded the room like a rising storm. The ship awakened like something sleeping had finally opened its eyes. Jack staggered back, breath shaking. "It's online," he gasped. The captain's voice answered at once, calm but carrying relief like hidden fire. "Bridge acknowledges. Prepare for jump." For a heartbeat, the entire ship seemed to hold its breath. Then the stars stretched into long rivers of light. Aurora's edge escaped. The silence that followed was heavy, not of fear, but of survival. Jack stood in the engine room, breathing hard, his hands trembling. Rin placed a hand on his shoulder. No words were needed. He had done it. He had saved them. And far away in the quiet of the bridge, the captain stood alone, eyes soft, not with pride for a servant, but respect for a human who refused to break. When the warp jump completed, Aurora's edge drifted into the safety of a quiet star system, far from pirates and danger. The alarms went silent. The flashing lights dimmed. The ship finally breathed again. So did the crew. Jack slumped against the wall of the engine room, his chest rising and falling fast. His arms were burned in places, his fingers cramped and shaking, his clothes coated in grease and soot. But he was alive. The ship was alive. Everyone was alive. Rin, Kavor, and Sirel stood beside him, exhausted and speechless. They didn't thank him with words. They didn't need to. The way they looked at him said everything. Respect, relief, recognition. For the first time, Jax felt like he belonged, but the one whose reaction mattered most was not there. The captain had been on the bridge during the jump, commanding, calculating, unbreakable as always. Jax wondered if she knew, if she understood how close they had been to death, if she realized that the ship would have been lost without him. Of course she knew. She always knew everything. Still, Jax found himself walking toward the bridge, even though his legs trembled. He felt drawn, not by duty, not by command, but by something deeper, something quiet, warm, and heavy in his chest. The doors slid open. The bridge was calm now. The crew returned to standard operations. The stars outside the view screen twinkled peacefully, and at the center stood the captain, her silver hair falling like moonlight over her shoulders. She turned when she heard him. Her eyes, those golden, sharp, burning eyes, met his for a long moment. Neither spoke. She stepped closer, her movements slow, almost gentle. Jax braced himself for criticism or lecture or some cold acknowledgement of duty fulfilled. But instead the captain said something he never expected. "You saved us." 3 words. That was all, but they struck him harder than any insult or order ever could. Jack swallowed, trying not to show how much those words meant. "I just did what I could," he said, his voice rough. "No," she replied. "You did more. You acted when fear should have frozen you. You worked when your strength should have failed. You gave everything, even when you believed you had nothing left." Her voice softened, not weak, not vulnerable, but real. That is something no training can teach. Jax looked down at his hands. Burned. Shaking. Human hands. We almost didn't make it, he said quietly. Yes, she said, but we did, because of you. The crew around them pretended to work, but everyone listened. Not because they were curious, but because something rare was happening. Something they had never seen. The captain, cold, disciplined, unbreakable, was showing gratitude. To a human. She stepped closer again, just one small step, but it felt like crossing a universe. When I demanded that you serve me, she said, I believed you would be a burden, a reminder of failure, a mistake to correct. Jax felt shame stir inside him, but I was wrong. His head snapped up. The golden eyes were not harsh now, not sharp. They were warm, deep, understanding. You are not here because of your mistake anymore, she continued. You are here because you earned your place. Jax's breath caught. His chest felt tight, but not with fear. With something like pride. He didn't know what to say. Words felt too small, so he just nodded. The captain reached out slowly as though unsure whether the gesture was allowed. Her hand rested lightly on his shoulder. Her touch was warm, alive. And for the first time she seemed less like a distant commander and more like someone who had carried her burdens alone for too long. You are free now, she said quietly. Your debt is repaid. The words should have felt like release, but instead Jax felt something twist inside him. Free. He was free to leave. The crew watched. The captain waited. Jax looked into her eyes, and he understood. He didn't want to leave. Not anymore. Not from her, and not from the place where he had finally found purpose. The words echoed in Jax's mind long after the captain spoke them. You are free now. Free to go, free to disappear, free to return to the quiet, lonely life he once had. He walked slowly through the corridors of Aurora's edge, feeling every step, every heartbeat. The ship that had once felt like a prison now felt alive, familiar home. He passed the engine room. The metal still smelled faintly of smoke and coolant. His tools lay scattered exactly where he left them. It no longer looked like a battlefield. It looked like a place where he fought for something worth keeping. Rin spotted him and jogged over. Her small claws clicked softly on the metal floor. You're leaving, aren't you? She asked, voice low. Jax didn't answer. He didn't need to. Rin looked up at him with wide, sad eyes. You don't have to. Kavor, massive and silent as always, stepped into view behind her. He nodded once, firm, respectful, almost protective. You fought with the heart of warriors, he rumbled. Such bonds are not ended by words of permission. Cyrell leaned against the wall nearby, arms crossed, expression calm but gentle. You belong here, she said simply. Belong Jax had never belonged anywhere. Not on Earth. Not in the colonies. Not even in the peacekeeper force before everything fell apart. But here they were waiting for his answer. I don't know what she wants, Jax said softly. Or what I'm supposed to be now. Rin smiled faintly. Then go ask her. Jax hesitated, but only for one breath. Then he turned and walked back toward the bridge. The captain stood alone, looking out at the stars. Her posture was strong, but there was something quiet in it, something tired, something human. Even if she wasn't human at all, she didn't turn when he entered. I thought you would leave, she said. I thought so too, Jax replied. Silence stretched between them, not cold, not heavy. Just waiting. The stars outside shifted slowly, gentle and endless. Jax took a breath. When I first came here, he said, I thought this was punishment. I thought I would hate every second. I thought I would be a burden, a failure. The captain said nothing, but her shoulders lowered just slightly as though his words mattered. But then I met them, he continued. Rin, Kavor, Cyrell, and you. And somewhere along the way, I stopped thinking about debt or orders. I stopped counting mistakes. I stopped wanting to run. His voice shook, not from fear but from truth. I found something here. Something I didn't know I was missing. The captain finally turned to face him. Her eyes were softer than he had ever seen, like the gold in them was warm, not blazing. Jax, she said quietly, I gave you your freedom because you earned it. You no longer owe me anything. You owe this ship nothing. Your life is yours again. He stepped forward. I know, he said, and I choose to stay. The captain's breath caught. Not dramatic, not loud, just a small, real sound of surprise. Jack smiled, tired but honest. I want to be here. Not because I have no choice. Not because I was ordered. But because this is where I should be. This is where I want to be. The captain looked at him for a long moment, then something changed in her expression. Something subtle, like dawn beginning after a long, dark night. Then stay, she said, voice soft. Not as a servant, not as a debt. As part of this crew, Jack stepped closer. So close he could feel the warmth of her presence. And with you? He asked carefully, unsure if the question was allowed. Her answer was quiet but certain. With me. No grand embrace. No dramatic gesture. Just two souls finally standing in the same place. The stars outside shimmered, as if the universe itself exhaled. Later, as the ship sailed forward into a new star field, the crew gathered for routine operations. They moved naturally around Jax, not as someone temporary, but as one of their own. The captain stood beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. No one questioned it. No one needed to. He was home. And this time, he had chosen it. The end.